Welcome to this video, and in today's lesson we are going to look at how we can connect access database in Visual Basic. Connecting database in Visual Basic can be done in two ways. One is by writing a code, and the other way is just to get some controls your data source and display your database on your phone. Right, so in this particular lesson we are going by the programming method, or writing a code to get the database to show in Visual Basic, right? So we are going to make use of the data grid view control and then program our way in to get this to work. Remember, we are using access. All right, so in our code, whatever we are going to do is basically for access. If you use MySQL or SQL Server, you have to modify the code a bit to suit whatever database you are going to use. All right, so in doing that, we are going to follow three simple steps. So the first step is to install the required package for the database you are using. All right, in this lesson we are using access database, and the package required will be the OleDb package. Right, and then the second thing is simply to get the data grid view control on our form, and then lastly we can implement our code. All right, so let's dive into Visual Studio and see how this works. All right, so right in Visual Studio we have to create a new form app. All right, and when it comes to writing the code to get your database, you have to go for this particular one, Windows Forms app. And if you want to do the other way, where you are not required to write any code, you have to go with the .NET framework, Windows Forms app, .NET framework. So I've used this recently, that's why I'm having it here. If you don't have them here, you can go ahead and type the name here, and you should have it. Make sure it's Visual Basic you are selecting. All right, so you can go ahead and create a new project, give it a name, and yeah, so I have my form ready. So what we are going to do is to drag our data grid view onto our form, and we can get that from here, or you can type the name from the search box and you can get it. So I'm simply going to drag it here and adjust the size to fit the form. All right, I think this is cool. So from here you just have to make sure you have a database you are working with, right? So let's quickly go ahead and let me show you how you can create one access database you can work with. Let's open access and come to blank database. You can give it a name and come to create. You can type whatever data you want to place in this column. Right, so you double click on the column name and give it the required name. So here we can do phone. All right, so this is the table name. You can rename it to any name you want, or you can maintain this as it is. All right, mostly when you are saving it, you will be asked to give the table a name. So let's go ahead, save this, and make sure you know exactly where you are saving your file. So you can change this to anything. You can say contact. Okay, then save it. Yes, so this is going to be saved in the documents folder. I already have a database access database I'm working with, so I'm not going to save this. All right, so from here I'm going to double click on the form and then paste the code here and then do the explanation for this, and we'll run this and that will be it. Yeah, so the first thing is to import the required library depending on the database you are using. We are using Access, so the appropriate library we can use is the System.Data.OleDb. Right, so let's go ahead. So this is the procedure for the form. Yeah, the first thing you can do is to define the file path to your database. Wherever you saved it, you have to reference that file path here, and also um, define the database engine you are using, which is basically the library we are making use of. All right, so this line we declare the variable db path, and that variable is storing the path to our database. All right, so you can change this to wherever you saved it alongside the name of your database. All right, and from there we create another connection string variable, and this will combine our database engine with our database part, right, which is db in this case. So db is actually the file path to our database on this line. Then you can end that with a semicolon inside a string. Right, so the next thing to do is to define some sort of query for your database, whatever you want to see from the database. So you define a variable and equate it to a query. So this is select all from some sort of a table. All right, so this should be your table name. All right, so I'm going to put contact here. Contact here, that was the name I gave my table. Right. All right, so the next thing is to create an instance, and this instance is actually helping us to connect our query with our connection string, which is the part to our database engine, and then where we are storing our database. Right, so you do that using the OleDbAdapter class. Right, and pass in your query and your connection string. Then you can also create an instance for the data table. This is going to store the data from the database in memory. All right, and from here we populate the adapter with the data we are getting from the database. And the last thing is to assign those data to the data grid view, which is the control that is going to help us see the data we have. Right, so you use the name of the data grid view, the control. If you change this from data grid view 1, you have to use the name you assigned to your control. Right, so let's come to our form. Click on this and you realize the name property is data grid view. If you change that property, you should the name property if you change the name property from data grid view 1 to any other thing, you have to use that name inside the code. All right, dot data source. So this is going to assign our data to the data source property of our data grid view. So yeah, with retrieving the data and then binding the data to our data grid view, we place that in a try catch block. So if everything goes fine, this is going to be executed. If something goes wrong, we can display some message to the user. So basically, this is the code you need to get your Access database running. You import the appropriate library, you put the appropriate file path there, your database path there, and you also get a table name for your database. So the last thing we can look at is to import the package that help us get this class. So we are making use of that class with this library, System.Data.OleDb. So let's copy that and look at how we can install that package. So in order to install that package, you come to tools from the menus, tools. The next thing is to go to Nugget Package Manager. Then you come to manage Nugget packages for solution, and that is going to bring you to this window. Mostly it will be on the installed tab. So come to browse and then you can paste this here and then search for this package. All right, so we have them here. The very first one on the list is What We Need by Microsoft.NET Framework. Right, so you can click on that and make sure you check the project box and then come to install. All right, so we have this here. When you go back to your code window, when this installs appropriately, the red line has to be off, right? So since the line is gone, this should actually work for us. All right, so we can run this and see how this is going to be. All right, so that will be it. We have our database showing in our data grid view. You can adjust this, the data grid view, to see whatever data you have in your database. Right, so that is just it for this video. Yeah, so make sure you like the video, subscribe. If you have any question, make sure you put it down in the comment section and share the video with your friends.